A long, loud groan escaped my throat as I attempted to roll over. I had just regained consciousness and somehow knew I needed to get up quickly. Unfortunately, my body didn't respond to the urgent commands from my foggy brain. I was confused about why I hurt so much, why I was lying face down in the dirt, creating little puffs of dust with each breath. My kidney area hurt, my head hurt, my arms felt like lead, my fingers felt crushed, and even my legs ached as much as my chest and abdomen. I had read somewhere that the human body can feel pain from multiple areas, but I'm here to say that whoever wrote that article was an idiot. With the groan, though, came a comment from somewhere in the darkness. "Hey, idiot, you awake and ready for round 2? Then came a laugh. And it wasn't a pleasant laugh. It was more of a derisive chuckle than a laugh of enjoyment. I lay there quietly and gathered my thoughts. I started with my name, Joe Thompson. That's it. That's my name. I am 35 years old and work as an accountant. I am 6 feet tall and about 210 pounds in weight. I work out 3 times a week and run a 5K twice a week as part of my workout. Sometimes I mountain bike as a break in my routine. I am married to Lisa Thompson. She is 32 years old, and we have been married for 6 years. We have no kids, but not because I don't want any. No, that is all on Lisa. She wants to experience life a little more before being tied down by kids. Now I remember that's why I'm lying on the ground breathing dust. Our home life had taken a serious nosedive over the past 6 to 8 weeks. I'm not just talking about a suspension of sex in the master bedroom here. No, it was the total package. Derisive comments about everything I did or didn't do, angry outbursts for the least little irritation, belittlement of my manhood, my skin color, my hair color and style, my parents, and all my siblings. Also, Lisa had not attempted to clean up after herself and had even refused to take her turn at cooking, something we had shared before the big freeze. Yeah, I even remember when we met and how we started dating. Suffice it to say, I really didn't want to waste time on those memories right now. Finally, having enough of the abuse and neglect of our marital duties, I had taken the day off and followed Lisa during the day. She had gone to work at her usual job as a cashier at the local supermarket. It was after her shift was over that it started to get interesting. Remember the old Chinese curse, "May you live in interesting times"? Well, it came true today, or rather this evening. It was a warm October day that became a warm October evening. The temperature must still be in the upper 60s as I lay in the dirt and contemplated the rest of the story. Lisa had left work and driven to the nearest convenience store. I watched as she pulled a little overnight case out of the trunk of her car. By the way, she was driving a very nice car, courtesy of me. Her paltry wages hardly kept her in clothes and makeup. I didn't mind paying all the bills, at least until now. I loved her and wanted only the best for my woman, my wife. When she exited the convenience store, her outfit consisted of the shortest microskirt I had ever seen. If she hadn't worn a thong and not been clean-shaven, you would have been able to count every hair on her mound without even trying hard. Her blouse was sheer and very see-through, and she had no bra on. Of course, she shook her hips as she walked back to her car and proceeded in the direction of sleazy bars on the outskirts of town. I dutifully followed her to her destination. She pulled into the sleaziest of the sleazy bars, a biker hangout. Now, please don't write and tell me how there are not that many bad bikers out there. I know that. I am a biker myself. But this was not the type of hangout where poker runs start or finish on the weekends. Lisa parked her little car on one end of the long line of bikes, all nicely arranged side by side, and made sure everyone could see her crotch as she exited. A couple of bikers were smoking next to the door. They just smiled and nodded as she swept by. Obviously, she was not a stranger to these patrons. I parked a ways away from the bikes and exited my old truck. Now I could afford a newer ride, but I had a lot of history in this truck. My dad had bought this old Chevy Silverado back in the 80s. He had kept it pristine, and I inherited it after he died in an industrial accident. I worked to keep that old Silverado as original as possible, except for the lift kit and the new 20-inch tires. Long ago, he had gotten rid of the original chrome front bumper and replaced it with a thick and wide piece of lumber. The rest of the truck was cherry. Yeah, it was a little loud. The guys smoking outside gave it a once-over as I climbed down and shut the door. It wasn't that unusual a truck, so they went back to their conversation and another round of butts. As I got closer, I could detect the odor of weed, so that made some kind of sense in this location. I was dressed in blue jeans and an old t-shirt instead of my usual suit. Following an unfaithful wife wasn't something you did in a business suit. Yeah, I didn't quite fit in, but was way closer in dress than my normal work attire. I went in, no cover charge in this place. I made my way to the bar and ordered a beer. No fancy brew today. Whatever was on tap would have to do. While sipping my barley pop, I casually observed what I could in the back bar mirror. Lisa was easy to find. There were not that many women in attendance tonight, and Lisa was head and shoulders prettier than the rest of the biker babes. She was already sitting on the lap of the biggest bruiser I had ever laid eyes on. He was at least a head taller than her while sitting down, and she was on his lap. He must have been well over 6 feet in height and at least 250 pounds, and it wasn't all beer gut. No, this guy worked out a lot. I decided to just finish my beer and make my way out when Lisa gave up kissing on the behemoth and looked around to make sure that all the women around could see she had the alpha male all locked up. I watched as she looked hard at the back of my head, looked away, and suddenly looked back. She recognized me. I vacated the stool like it was greased and sitting on a side hill. Lisa pointed me out and shouted, "That's my husband, Joe. Stop him. Someone. He is going to ruin this for us all." Some guy immediately reacted and grabbed my arm. I just turned a little and shoved him into the wall hard enough to let me go. I turned back toward the door and made another few steps before the next guy tried to punch me in the side of the head. I have a hard head. Also, I wasn't always an accountant. I grew up in a poorer section of town and learned early on how to put the hurt on someone. His fist grazed my head as I ducked. My right hit him right in the solar plexus, and he grunted and bent over to catch his breath. I didn't wait to make sure he was down. I made the door just as another big old boy started to enter. Behemoth was now shouting, get him now." The guy made sure to stay right in front of me, keeping me inside for a moment or two. My old football coach used to say that we needed to block through our opponents. So I aimed for the clean open air outside the bar as I lowered and put my shoulder in his chest and drove him back. I didn't get clear of him as he wrapped his big arms around me. As we cleared the door, he jammed his left foot and threw me over his left shoulder. My momentum carried me down the steps to the dirt, and I rolled. I came up fast, but Behemoth was now in the fight. God, he was huge and well set up. He smashed through my arms as I was trying to protect my face and torso. I don't know if I even landed one blow to his chiseled face or body. All I remember was pain with every hit, every punch, and every kick. Once he got me on the ground, he didn't even start to breathe heavily as he took me apart. And he kept talking the whole time. Comments like, "Take this, loser, stupid idiot. Come into my place and try to make trouble. I'll screw her 3 times tonight just to show you who's boss. I'll kill her every night she comes here. And then she makes you take my sloppy seconds when she gets home." It went on until I wasn't moving. As I lost consciousness, I could hear Lisa laughing at how I looked on the ground. Behemoth told the few others to watch me and come get him if I got up. I want another piece of the little loser before I am done with him for the night. Now that I was conscious again, I needed a plan to get out of here without another beating. One eye wasn't opening, so I assumed it was blood keeping me from seeing out of it. I worked my right hand, the one that was trapped under my body when I fell, until I could get to that eye. I had been out for a while, as the blood was crusty from drying. I rubbed until my eyelids started to open. and I could see a little. My left eye seemed undamaged. Not knowing where the watchers were located, I hoped I was in a shadow and slowly started to slide toward my truck. I moved a few inches as quietly as I could and then stopped. After making sure no alarm was raised, I moved some more. I kept this up for the entire time needed to move closer to the truck. Once I was in the shadow of the bikes and Lisa's car, I shakily got up on my knees. I chewed the inside of my cheek to keep from crying out from the pain. My breathing was ragged, so I assumed I had some broken ribs. It hurt to take even a shallow breath. Sharp pain was my constant reminder to take it very slow. Once I was up, I looked around. My watchers had apparently been given extra weed and booze as they were seated next to the building and not paying attention to anything around them. The Taliban would have had a field day with these idiots. I turned and looked. There was no one near my truck. Hunched over, I slowly made my way to my ride. I got the door unlocked and then opened it. Now might be the time for an alarm, as the dome light came on. It was like a beacon in the otherwise dark parking lot. I regretted jacking up the truck so high as I tried to climb up. Only the fear that I might be discovered before getting into safety made me suck it up and climb up. I settled into the seat and put the key into the ignition. With the door shut, the dome light was now off. I took a couple of calming breaths as I tried to figure out my next move. Once I cranked my ride over, the quiet would be broken and my attackers would be alerted. How do I get away? I looked out and a smile slowly came over my face. My teeth and my lips hurt, so the smile went away quickly. Right there in front of me, about 30 yards distant, was Lisa's car and the bikes, all lined up so nice and pretty. Did I have the power needed? I couldn't crawl back out and engage the hubs, so I would have to do this in two-wheel drive. This old truck didn't have the automatic hubs the new trucks had. It was time. I cranked the engine, and it caught on the first try. I dropped the transmission into low and floored it. The watchers by the door looked up, kind of bleary-eyed, as my truck launched toward the car and the bikes on the other side of it. The big old piece of timber blasted the left side of Lisa's car. The car was so light it almost came off its wheels. I know I lifted it, and it slammed into the bikes on the other side. There was a horrendous noise that brought the watchers fully alert and screaming. I powered forward until my forward progress was halted. I backed up, and luckily nothing hung up. I twisted the wheel and hit second gear as I cleared the worst of the wreckage before twisting the wheel back and hitting the rest of the bikes. This time, I had enough forward momentum to push the bikes right up against the door of the bar, which stopped the bunch trying to exit at the same time. Sadly, I couldn't punch into the building itself. I would have loved to drop the whole piece on Lisa and her lover. I backed up and spun my wheels, kicking up a cloud of dust as I exited the parking lot and headed away from town. I was hurting, and my breathing hadn't improved with the work of steering and shifting gears. I needed a hospital, but wasn't going to go to the local community hospital. No, I was headed about 50 miles west to a trauma center. For the first few miles, there was no one behind me. The two-lane highway seemed to be deserted for some odd reason. Then I could make out a couple of headlights coming up fast. There were a few more right behind the first ones. No red or blue lights, though, so the cops weren't on the prowl already. Soon they caught up. I could see the individual headlights of motorcycles. I guess I might not have gotten them all. A couple came up alongside the truck. Some pieces of chain bounced off the metal. Darn it. I don't think they could hurt the truck, but could mess up the paint. My mind quickly tried to figure out how to stop them or get away. I knew their top end was probably higher than my old truck, so outrunning them was out of the question. In desperation, I swerved over the center line and took the couple alongside me off the other side of the road. Those big bikes don't like ditches, and they both wrecked. Well, I took the left-hand ones out. A couple of others came up alongside my right side. A quick swerve, and they were herded right off the right-hand side of the road, where they also bit the dirt. I glanced and saw someone cartwheel off his bike. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy. I still had a bunch behind me, and they were dangerously close. I hoped they didn't get the idea to leap from a bike into the back of my truck bed, as that would get them too close for comfort, as if they weren't already too close. Suddenly, I slammed on my brakes and felt a small thump. I hit the gas again and didn't see any more headlights behind me. In all the movies, the bikers always pester the car driver until they win. Is it really that easy to defeat a motorcycle? When I got near Centerville and the trauma center, I again started to think hard. How do I keep Lisa from finding out where I am? She and Behemoth would first assume I would either go home to lick my wounds or go to the nearest hospital. Not finding me anywhere close, I would assume they would look further afield. If I was admitted to a regular bed in the trauma center, how do I protect myself? I thought and thought as I slowed down to a crawl. Finally, I remembered an acquaintance who had some land near Centerville. He rented out the pasture and seldom ever even went to look over the land. It might just work for me. I proceeded to where I thought his small ranch was located. There had not been anyone living there for many years, but the old farmhouse and barn were still there, albeit surrounded by tall trees and weeds. I pulled in and parked my truck behind the barn. I left my wallet and identification in the cab and put my keys on top of the rear wheel, where they wouldn't be easily spotted. It hurt to walk, but I had to get some distance from the truck. Once I made the 911 call for help, the local law enforcement dudes will be out looking for the Silverado. I made it about a mile before the pain and the shortness of breath got too much to bear. I sat down on the edge of the gravel road and pulled out my cell phone. I dialed 911 and whispered when the operator answered, "Help me. I was abducted and beaten and woke on the side of the road. I have no idea where I am. Please send help." Other than lying about knowing where I actually was, I had not lied, and I really needed help. The operator tried to get me to look for landmarks, but I just let the phone go down to my side. I knew they could locate me by the phone's GPS. All they had to do was ping it, and they would get a close location unless I was on the fringe of my coverage area. I did whisper that I was on a gravel road, but there was no signage to help otherwise. I then lay down to rest. I must have fallen asleep or lost consciousness, because the next thing I knew someone was bending over me. At first, I couldn't tell who it might be. Had Behemoth or any of his cronies found me? It was definitely a male, so it couldn't be Lisa anyhow. I had trashed her car, so unless she had another ride, figured out it couldn't be her. It was starting to get light out. Daybreak couldn't be that far off. But what day was it? Had I been here on the side of a lonely country road for more than a day? The voice kept asking questions. I finally made up a name for him. My voice was still only a whisper. Compounding the beating I had endured was the lack of any kind of liquid in the last unknown amount of hours. My name is Jake Harris. I live in Riverton. I am 37 years old, and I am allergic to penicillin. All lies, of course, but the man asking the questions didn't know that. Without an ID, no one could refute my claims. I just had to keep my story straight. I told the voice that I must have been mugged, slugged into submission, beaten, and dumped here. I asked him what day it was. I almost let out a sigh of relief when it was apparent I had not been unconscious for over a day. Soon, an ambulance was on the scene, and I was off to the trauma center. The paramedic in the back with me started an IV and gave me something for nausea. He also gave me something for my pain. I just went with the flow and didn't complain much, except for the heaviest of bumps. We were at the trauma center in a matter of minutes. The dried blood on my face was carefully washed off by a very nice nurse. The doctor tut-tutted over my injuries. I stayed with the story that I had been abducted, beaten, taken to the rural area, and dumped. I told them my wallet was missing, so I didn't have any ID. I gave them a birth date that was a combination of my mom's birthday and my brother's birth year. I could easily remember that lie. The birthday would only make me 37 instead of 35, but I figured they wouldn't really care since I had been unconscious multiple times since the beating. Soon a police officer came in and questioned me. I gave him a location in a different town for the site of the abduction. There are a lot of small towns around Centerville. Crap. Now I had to make up another lie when he asked for my home address. Too many lies to keep straight, my kid Dicey. I also told him I was divorced and had no other family. Phew, that lie would be easier to keep up with. The cop then asked a weird question. Do you ride a motorcycle? That one I could easily answer without worrying about the truth. I used to many years ago, but have not owned a bike for a long time. Why do you ask? We are investigating an accident, or actually a series of accidents, that happened about 20 miles from town. 2 bike riders were killed in one accident, and 6 others have varying injuries ranging from multiple fractures to critical head injuries. Of course, none of the riders have been able to tell us what actually happened. We have detectives looking into the incident as accidents seem to be illogical. These guys are hardcore bike riders, and having accidents is not realistic. The working thought is that a rival bike gang might have caused them to crash. I shook my head. I don't even know anyone who belongs to a bike club. No one I even work with owns a bike or goes on poker runs. Any idea who might have wanted to hurt you? Nope. I am divorced and live alone. I work on a non-union construction site, and we haven't had any trouble with the union boys for a long time. I go out and drink a single beer about once a week as I have a drinking problem and can't afford to let myself get too drunk. The last time I did that, I didn't sober up for 3 or 4 weeks. It has been hell getting my reputation back. My wife remarried and is doing good as far as I know. She left me because of my drinking. I don't think her husband is jealous, as she most likely tells him about all the crappy things I used to do. The officer finally left, and the nurse came back in. The doctor wants you to stay here in the hospital tonight. He has concerns about your kidney function. There was some blood in your urine. You have some broken ribs too that need to heal. There is not much we can do about those except to give you some pain medicine so that you can still breathe adequately. I nodded and let them do their thing. When she left me alone again, I pulled my cell phone out and called my brother Dan. I know it's a little early, but I need some help. Dan is cool, so he took it in stride. I told him what had happened and where I was. I also gave him my fake name to use if he came to see me. What do you need right now? He had always liked Lisa but didn't question me or give me any crap. That might happen later, but not right now. I need my stuff from the house. If you would arrange for a mover to not ask questions and not let that woman interfere, then my things could be moved to a storage facility. Can you arrange all that? He had no problem with that. Since we had come from a hard-knock neighborhood, he knew some guys who knew some other guys who were used to people moving to new digs on a moment's notice. I texted him a list of what I wanted from the house. I also didn't care if they had to force the door. My next call was to a realtor. He was also an old friend from the hood. Mike, I need a fast favor. No problem, Joe. What's up? Lisa is cheating on me with a dirtbag biker. I don't know his name, but he hangs out at Tony's out on the edge of town. I don't care right now about that, so he can wait until later. Today, I need to list my house on the market and sell it as fast as possible so that Lisa can't move the a-hole into my place. I had purchased the house just after we got married. Lisa's credit rating hurt our chances for owning a house, so the mortgage and the title were in my name only. I had always intended to get her name on the title, but had procrastinated about that. Maybe my subconscious had known something like this might happen to our marriage. Yeah, I know she was entitled to at least half of everything, but we hadn't gone to court yet, so I was going to make her life as complicated as possible. Okay, Joe, I understand, but what happens if Lisa is at the house when I come by to do my market assessment and put up the sign? Right now, she is just a tenant and can't say yay or nay about the ownership of that house. Just tell her I have moved, and the house has to go. I thought a minute. Why don't you act as my rental manager and take a lease agreement to her? Make it a month-to-month lease, but include how she has to maintain the premises in available condition and keep it ready to be shown. Tell her she has to sign it, or she will be evicted. I don't think she is smart enough to fight it until she gets a lawyer, and I don't think she'll do that until I have her served. I told him about the movers that would be coming soon. He chuckled and promised to grab a new lock for whichever door would be breached. I was then moved to a room, given some breakfast, and got some sleep. I didn't plan on calling a lawyer just yet. Let her stew for a couple of days. Dan called back late in the afternoon. Joe, all done. The guys went over and got your recliner, the microwave, washer and dryer, the guest bedroom set, your guns and gun safe, and all your tools. They also took all the dishes, pans, and utensils, even though you didn't list them. They just wanted Lisa to be as inconvenienced as possible. Oh, by the way, the bed in the master suite accidentally got bleach poured on it. I don't think the fabric will stand up to the corrosiveness. The room might have to be aired out for a couple of days. I had to chuckle, even though it hurt. Was she there? They didn't see hide nor hair of the witch. I think they were disappointed. You know the guys. They don't like witches. I had to agree. He signed off and promised to come and get me when I was to be released. Now you might be wondering about my finances. Had she had time to raid the coffers? Well, didn't I say I am an accountant? I am a good accountant. Some of my clients are from the old neighborhood and have some shady income streams. I make their money all look good for the IRS. I also only let Lisa have access to her money, and to a joint account I put money in on a regular basis. She couldn't touch the savings or investment accounts. Yeah, again, I would have to share with her, but not until a judge ruled. Right now, she just had her wages for her cashier job to rely on, unless Behemoth was paying her way. I checked the account balances. She had withdrawn all of the available cash from the joint account. No problem. I still had my own account where my pay was deposited. It wasn't even in the same bank as the joint account. About 6 in the evening, Mike called me back. I didn't know he had no love for Lisa until he reported, "Joe, your wife is a little miffed. She was there when I came by late this afternoon." Apparently, the front door was standing wide open when she came back to the house, and stuff was missing, as she put it. She was pleasant to me until I pulled out the new lock and started to replace the damaged one on the door. She got a little pawed when I put the key in a box on the door itself and secured it. By the way, you need a new front door. That one is a little damaged and will hurt the sale. I chuckled again. The pain medicine they gave me helped me to find some pleasure instead of aggravating the pain. Did she have any problem with the news that she is a tenant and needs to pay rent from now on? He chuckled. Oh yeah, that went over like a lead balloon. When I told her the house was for sale, she almost popped a blood vessel. She screamed at me to get off the premises. I told her that I was the new rental manager and that only the owner of record could force me off the premises. I then gave her the lease to sign. She, of course, refused to sign and wanted to know where you are. Have you blocked her phone number? She kept saying you have not been answering when she has tried to call you. I didn't think you would want her to know where you were located, and I don't really know anyhow, so I couldn't help her out. Darn it. That last statement was said very sarcastically. Did you tell her she would be evicted if she doesn't sign the lease? Yeah, but you know how some people always think they know better. I told her she had 24 hours to sign, or I would serve the eviction notice. I hope she doesn't sign. She will be out of the house within 30 days if she doesn't. I know a couple of sheriff's deputies that hate cheating wives, and they will be glad to help her move out, even if it is just to the curb. After he hung up, I checked my phone. Somehow, and it must have been while I was kind of out of it, I had actually blocked her number. There were multiple attempts to call me starting at about midnight last night, and then multiple texts. Instead of deleting them, I decided to keep them in case my future divorce attorney needed to see them and hear the voice messages. I slept pretty good that night. Of course, it might have been the pain medication, but I wanted to believe that making Lisa a little upset was a better sleep aid than the pain stuff. The next morning, the doctor finally came around. I was being released. My kidney function was better, and my breathing was okay. But I wasn't going to go out running for some time. The doctor was very adamant about that little fact. I had to promise to take care of myself and not get abducted again. When Dan got to the hospital, I had corrected my name for admissions and had called the office and had them give the poor girl the insurance information since I still didn't have my wallet. Dan took me to my truck, and soon we were on the way back to our hometown. I certainly wasn't going to say my home, as I was now homeless. When I got into town, I checked in with work. To say the least, my boss was livid as I had gone incognito for days. He quieted down when I told him I had been abducted and beaten and left on the road's edge to die. He also questioned who might have wanted to hurt me. He also told me that Lisa was trying to find me. I don't think he liked my chuckle as I told him she could go to hell. I think he had desires in his heart to have sex with the witch. He could have her if his wife would agree, for all I cared. I made arrangements to take a couple of extra days off to look into my shelter needs. It was a slow time, as quarterly reports had just been finalized and tax season was still a ways off. I quickly found an apartment near work. Our local economy was doing poorly right then, so housing wasn't hard to find. I signed a year lease and paid the necessary deposits to get the electricity and natural gas in my name. I also called the cell phone company and made my plan month to month and arranged to have Lisa shut off in a couple of days. That would give me time to let her know she was on her own. After that, I went to the furniture rental company and picked out a couch, a bedroom set, and then went and bought some pots, pans, dishes, and utensils. Yeah, I know Dan's friends had taken all that. I planned on giving them back to Lisa if she asked. I called Dan and set up a time for the guys to bring my stuff over. I then sat in my new domicile and dialed my soon-to-be ex-wife. Surprise! She answered on the first ring. "Hello, is that you, Joe?" "Unless someone stole my phone, of course it is." "Why do you have to be insulting? Where are you? And why haven't you been home? Are you stupid or what? I stop at a bar to have a beer and see you with your new lover. I didn't even try to confront you. There was no need. After the way you have been treating me the past couple of months, it was obvious you have found someone new, and I was just the convenient bill payer. I tried to get up and leave, but you had to decide I needed to be stopped. Your boyfriend beat me down and stomped me while you stood and laughed. I had to crawl away and ended up in a hospital for a couple of days, wondering if my ribs or my kidneys were going to survive your boyfriend's attack. And you actually ask why I have not been back to the house. Are you seriously deranged? Why would I put myself anywhere near you so your new man can beat me again? Do you want to see me dead?" She started to blubber some inanity, but I carried on. I hoped she was recording this. "That's it, isn't it? You get me killed. Come up with some kind of explanation. Maybe that I was jealous of your innocent relationship with the a-hole, and then you get everything. The house, my money, my pension, and my life insurance. Bravo. Too bad I thwarted your plan." She actually started to cry. "I need you to come home. Everything has gone wrong. The house is up for sale. There is stuff missing. I think someone broke in before I could get home and stole things." "Yeah, someone I know broke in and took my things along with some stuff to help me set up my new place. I will be fully set up tomorrow sometime. Sucks to be you, but I will bet your new man will be supportive and help out." "How could you be so cruel to me? That man, that realtor told me I had to start paying rent. Why do I have to pay rent on our home? This is so wrong. What happened to us?" I had to snort. Yes, actually snort over the phone. What happened to us? Are you really that dumb and clueless? Or do you think I am dumb and brain dead? I think you should look in the mirror for your answer. You decided to treat me like crap and start a new relationship with the behemoth before leaving me. You spend my money on skimpy new clothes and go bar hopping with him. Obviously, that night wasn't the first night you were there with him. as everyone seemed to know who you were and who you belonged to. Then you stood and laughed as he beat me half to death. If I had made any real noise when I woke up, he was going to finish the job. That I have no doubt. So kiss my butt. You are now a renter, and Mike is the landlord. Do not talk to me about the rent. Just pay it, or get out. But I need some money. There isn't any left in the checking account. There won't be any either. I will continue to pay the utilities until the house sells. You pay the rent on your pay. You have a job. Quit buying makeup and clothes for a while. You have enough to get by on. Or better yet, get Behemoth to pay your way. But you are my husband. You were supposed to take care of me. Yeah, and as my wife, you were supposed to cheer when your lover and his gang beat me up. Guess we both lose, huh? What do I do for a car? My car was totaled, and I need some way to get to work. Call your boyfriend. You can ride on the back of his bike. You are already used to straddling something he owns. He's in the hospital with a head injury and multiple broken bones. He was chasing you when you hit the brakes. He slammed hard and flew a few meters and landed on his head. He has multiple bones fractured. Karma, I guess. Too bad he didn't die. Tell him that I will be looking out for him. If I see him before he sees me, I will avoid him. Otherwise, I will be carrying my gun and will shoot instead of talking. The butts just kept coming. Finally, I told her to eat crap and die and hung up. Her number was still blocked, so I didn't have to shut off my phone. I tried to sleep. Honestly, I really did, but I had no bed, and it hurt too much to lay on the floor. I finally left the apartment and went to the nearest decent motel and checked in for the night just so I could sleep in a real bed. In the morning, it took all I could muster to get up. God, I hope I healed quickly. I wonder if prize fighters feel this bad after going 10 rounds with someone just as good or better than they are. I had a quick breakfast and then went back to the apartment. Soon, Dan's guys had my stuff unloaded and set up. I gave them each an extra $100 bill for their trouble. After that, the rental place came and brought the couch and other stuff. I gave them a tip also. I was going to have to hit the bank again for walking around money. I tried to keep a couple of thousand in ready cash stashed somewhere easy to get to. After all, I am not pure as the driven snow. Someone somewhere might decide that my accounting practices for my select friends might be just a shade illegal, so I have my go bag set up and ready to go. And yes, to your question, it is not in my former house. I sat down in my familiar recliner to contemplate my near future. Should I disappear for a while or stick around and work and act like nothing is going on? When should I pull the trigger and divorce my cheating 304 of a wife? Should I make her dangle on for a while? Should I act like we are getting back together and then dump her? Nah, the last was a non-starter. She would just continue with Behemoth or his replacement. I might make her dangle on until she got smart enough to get a lawyer. In our state, the outcome of a divorce wasn't based on why the dissolution was filed. Unless she went to jail for my beating, no judge would care why we were getting divorced. The ruling would just list out who paid what and when, not why. She would get at least 50% of everything that was publicly known about. I would retain the rest. Okay, so how can I make my wife's life a little nastier? After all, I need and demand some retribution. So far, the gravy train has derailed, and she will have to fend for herself from now on. I hope the house sells quickly. I deliberately priced it to move quickly, even in this economy. Her boyfriend is in the hospital. I don't know how badly he is hurt, but I could only hope he will not regain full brain function and has to be fed from a tube the rest of his miserable life. That goes for any of his friends that happened to be there the other night when he beat me down. They all need to suffer for their sins. Do I expect to be visited by his friends? Yes, sometime in the future. They will want to right the wrongs they perceive to have been visited on them. I went over to where my gun safe had been placed by the movers and got out my judge. This bad boy only carries 5 rounds in its cylinder, but can shoot either .45 caliber. That's the .45 long Colt, not the .45 ACP or 410 shot shells. I loaded it with 410 rounds filled with slugs. These rounds could blast through a concrete block wall. I vowed to carry it with me wherever I went, in the apartment or out of it. In the accompanying leg bag, I carried extra shells, both of the .45 and 410 variety. I sat and wept a little. I firmly believe that the best offense was a solid offense. So now what? Who should pay next for my wife's infidelity? I decided to just let it ride for a bit and see what was coming next. The next few days were uneventful. I actually went back to work, but kept the judge in my waistband, just in case. My phone started to go off again from an unknown number. It was Lisa. She had a new number since I had shut hers off. For some strange reason, she believed that we had just had a minor spat, and I was overreacting. When I asked her how Behemoth was doing, she acted like she didn't know who I was talking about. I guess I still didn't know the name of my attacker, and she certainly couldn't relate to the name Behemoth. Finally, I asked her about her biker buddy, and she replied, "Steve is doing better, but he might not ever walk or ride a motorcycle again." I almost lost it as I contemplated. Steve is not a name that strikes fear into a person. He must have a nasty biker name. She agreed. His biker name is Grizzly. Now that was a name I could respect. Sorry all you Steves out there, but you have to agree with me about striking fear into someone. She still wanted to know when I was coming home. I said, never. She also wanted to know about the rent. I ended the phone call then and blocked the new number. A couple of days later, a motorcycle tried to follow me to my apartment from work. He was hard to ignore as he looked very out of place with his leathers, beard, and long hair in a traditional business area. I made sure to drive the opposite direction before losing him in heavy traffic. Unfortunately, I left a few irate drivers in my wake as I cut across 3 lanes of traffic to take a right, leaving the biker in the abandoned stack-up lane before heading back the other direction to my apartment. I made sure the judge was ready to lower his gavel on anyone who might successfully follow me to my new home. The next day, a different biker, just as stupidly dressed to make sure he stood out in a crowd, tried to follow me. After a moment's thought, I led him to Lisa's house. I had no idea if she was home since her car was in the junkyard, but I counted on most of Behemoth's friends, not knowing where she lived and assuming this was my home base. I parked in the driveway and stayed in the truck until the biker drove by nonchalantly. I then backed out and headed the opposite direction. No one bothered me that night, and I actually slept a little better. I must be healing. But man, those bruises were looking nasty as they healed. The next morning, a couple of cops stopped in at work and asked me about my whereabouts the night before. I had no alibi as I had slept alone after eating my single meal in my apartment. When I asked why the questions, I wasn't surprised about the answer. Your wife. He paused to look at her name on his notebook. Lisa Thompson reported that someone vandalized her house last evening while she was visiting a friend in the hospital. She claims it must have been you, as you are presently estranged for, and I quote, a misunderstanding. Did you notice the for sale sign in the front yard? He nodded. I continued, I am selling the house. Can you tell me why I would damage the property and reduce its value if I am trying to get the best deal from a buyer? He couldn't answer. I'd brought him up to speed. My wife is having an affair with the guy she was visiting in the hospital. He is the one responsible for all the bruises on my face. Would you like to see my ribs or kidney area? He shook his head. Well, for your information, the a-hole put me in the hospital for 2 days after severely beating me. If I had not snuck away, he was intending on continuing the beating when I woke up. My wife, the White Witch, egged him on and laughed at my puny attempt to protect myself. His friends blamed me for the fact he and some of his other biker buds ended up in an accident. If I was investigating this crime, I would go and talk to Steve, her boyfriend, and see what he has to say about the vandalism. Well, sir, This puts a little different light on the subject. As a matter of fact, your neighbors reported that a group of very loud motorcycles were in your driveway last evening. We just had to check on her story of what happened. I nodded. This time, I would imagine that her boyfriend and his cronies have no idea where she lives. I was there for a short time yesterday evening to pick up some more of my belongings. Maybe one of them followed me and made the assumption that I still lived there. After they left, I called Mike. Just to let you know, last night Lisa's house was vandalized. I still have the homeowner's insurance on it, so I need estimates of the damage for insurance purposes. Please let Lisa know she will have to get renter's insurance now. He laughed out loud. Couldn't happen to a nicer person. I talked to her yesterday, and she is still balking about the lease agreement. I will drop by with a member of law enforcement and let her know it is up to her to keep the house in lettable condition once any current damage is repaired. I take it that you are not responsible for her discomfiture. No, I have nothing to do with it. For the last few days, a couple of bikers, I imagine friends of Behemoth, have been trying to follow me. I led yesterday's dummy by Lisa's house. I am sure the damage was due to a mistaken identity. The police are investigating and have questions for her boyfriend, Steve something or other. He chuckled again, and later I was told I had a call from an unknown person. Yep, it was Lisa. Short and sweet. What do you want? Why did you try to drive the cops on me? What would make you assume I would damage a property I'm trying to sell? Are you taking stupid pills now? That kind of set her back a little. I heard a gulp, and then she spoke in a conciliatory manner. Joe, I am sorry. Since you were mad at me, I immediately thought you might have done the damage. After the cops left, I called Steve and asked him. He admitted some of his friends might have been looking for retribution. You hurt a lot of the guys and damaged a lot of motorcycles. I hurt someone. Who and how did I hurt someone? I was the one lying face down in the dirt after your whole boyfriend beat me unconscious. Yeah, I stopped them from pursuing me, but I don't know how you can say I hurt anyone. I was the one who ended up in the hospital. Steve and the others know it was you who ran them off the road. They were just trying to stop you from going to the cops. You didn't have to kill and maim anyone. Jesus, will you listen to yourself? I repeat, I was the one beat unconscious in that parking lot, and your boyfriend had people watching to see when I woke up so he could come out and finish the job. You stood there and cheered them on. You relished my beating. Now his friends have trashed your house, and you try to blame that on me also. Keep taking those stupid pills. You will be turning tricks to support Behemoth soon. She tried to blubber on that it was all my fault. I told her to shut up and listen. Mike will be around sometime today to look at the damage and make a report for the insurance company. After the claim is settled, I will only insure the dwelling, as it is a rental now, not a private dwelling. You will have to get renter's insurance. But this is our home, not a rental. Why are you doing this? Before I took the Lord's name in vain again, I needed to take a deep breath. What part of your cheating and throwing away our marriage do you not understand? This is all on you. I was content to support you and keep you happy, but you decided to go to the cheating side of town and start a relationship with another man. You cheered when he was beating me. You put him on my tail when I was trying to leave. You egged him and his friends on. You wanted me hurt. This is all on you. I ended the phone call and tried to get on with the rest of my day. My ribs were hurting from the deep breaths I had to take to try and calm down. My face ached and was actually itching from the healing skin from all of the abrasions, and I was pissed as hell. It continued on as I was leaving work. When I exited the parking lot, another biker was waiting. He didn't even try to be circumspect. He just got a couple of cars behind me and stayed there. I drove out of town towards Centerville and proceeded at a sedate speed. Just as I got to the edge of the city, I suddenly jumped on a side street and made some quick turns. He had to close the gap to keep up with me. That's when I slammed on the brakes and turned the Silverado sideways in the street. It was a narrow street with cars parked on either side. It left him with little room to maneuver, and his bike was too big to do a slide and turn like a dirt bike. I jumped out and pulled the judge from my holster. He got a very sick look on his face as I held the pistol up just enough to let him know I meant business, but not lined up on his chest to pose a deadly threat. He tried to bluff. "Hey, mister, I don't know what your beef is, but I just want to get to my home down the street. Why the sudden stop and the gun?" "Oh, buddy, I don't buy that for a second. You have followed me since I left work. We are now 40 miles from wherever you think is your home. There is no warning for you and your friends. I'm done being nice. You screwed up last week and watched Grizzly beat me down. Some of your friends paid the ultimate price for trying to run me down. Others are still healing from that attempt. Last night, you vandalized Grizzly's girlfriend's house thinking you had me cold. And now you are sitting there without any friends or backup, just about begging me to drop you like a bad habit. I don't know how much more stupid you can get. One shot from this gun, and you are lying there in the street with a huge hole in your chest and your life pumping out onto the concrete. You will live long enough to know that you are dying, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it." He started to bluster again, but stopped as I cocked the judge. "I told you, no more warnings. If you survive the next few minutes, I hope you go back to your buddies and tell them how serious I am. I will tell the DA and the cops I felt threatened by you. I have sworn out an order of protection from you and your friends as I believe my life is in danger." I actually had not, but he didn't know that. I will plead self-defense if it even comes to court. Somehow, I don't believe there are too many people who would care if I put a couple of you dirtbags down. Maybe I will get a humanitarian award for removing you and your friends from the gene pool. I took another step forward. Now, to really put the screws to him. Look around. Do you see anyone paying attention to what is going on in this street right now? The good people of this neighborhood probably heard your beast and don't want to get involved. Do you hear any sirens? The cops either don't know about us standing here or don't care enough to intervene." He did look around. There was no one on the street, even though it was early evening and the weather was mild. I casually clicked the cylinder 2 stops. He got an even ghastlier look on his face. I was only 5 or 6 feet away from him when I pulled the judge up and shot out his headlight with a 410 shell with birdshot in it. There was no penetration through the headlight assembly, and I was too close for the pattern to spread enough to hit him. I do think he crapped his pants, though. Now I would get this piece of turd turned around and headed home. Darkness is coming quick, and you have no headlight. I might be following you, and somehow I don't think you would fare well in a collision in the dark. He nodded and did the multi-turn it took to get his ride pointed in the other direction, and took off like a scalded dog. I waited until he turned the corner before going back to the truck and heading toward the downtown area for a bit before heading on home. I did keep a close eye on traffic, as Biker Dude may have called his buddies and told them where to find me. I got back to my apartment and parked the truck out behind the building, as I always did, before carefully making my way in. I had replaced the empty cartridge with another 410 shell, but this one had slugs. No more Mr. Nice Guy. The rest of my evening and night were uneventful. I wish I could say that it stayed that way, and that some kind of common sense reigned in the bike world, but the truce only lasted a month or so until Stevie Boy got out of the hospital. That fateful night started out with me again checking my mirror, often as I drove a meandering way to my apartment. I couldn't see anyone following me, so I relaxed a little and headed to my new home. I parked behind the building as usual, and was soon eating my previously frozen meal while watching some evening football. It was getting late in the season, so there wouldn't be many night games during the week. Soon the game was just getting over, and I was contemplating the softness of my bed when there was a sudden banging on my apartment door. The accompanying tirade that was only slightly muffled let me know Steve now knew where I lived. I turned on the video recorder on my phone and then called 911. Isn't it grand how the new phones can multitask? I asked for law enforcement, and said I was afraid for my life. The dispatcher could hear the yelling through the phone. She assured me that help was on the way. At first, I contemplated opening the door and letting Behemoth in, but decided that might look like enticement to the police. I decided to wait for him to break the flimsy door down. I was standing with the judge up and ready, with the hammer cocked, when the door finally popped open with such force that one hinge was pulled from the frame. Steve, aka Grizzly, rushed in with a grin on his face. "Well, it's about time for you to pay for your screw-up." His hands were raised to rain down destruction on me again. The stupid idiot didn't even look at the gun in my hand. I slammed 2 shots into his chest. I don't know what else he was going to say, but his hands dropped to his chest, and he got a strange, wondering look on his face. His momentum kept him coming at me. I sidestepped him and looked at the door. A couple of his biker friends were coming in, I suppose to help kill me with their bare hands. I didn't let them get the chance. They each received a single shot, center mass. They went down. Those slugs have very good stopping power. I just wish that it was like the movies and their bodies would have been slammed against the doorway. But they just dropped and started groaning and begging for help. I went back to my phone and told the dispatcher to get 2 or 3 ambulances coming, as I had just shot multiple attackers in my house. As I was talking to her, I was reloading the judge. His job might not be done yet. I started to relax a little as I started hearing sirens, and then the roar of motorcycles exiting the parking lot. I guess Steve's friends didn't want to be interviewed about why they were sitting outside my apartment. Neither of the 2 extra bikers I had taken down looked good, but they were breathing and crying in pain. I guess I must have hit them in the abdomen. Steve, though, was gasping for air, and there were bloody bubbles appearing in the wounds in his chest. He wasn't defeated, though. He gasped out some invectives in a hoarse whisper. "You a hole. Why didn't you just roll over and die when I kicked your butt? You stupid idiot. She belongs to me now." He somehow managed to blurt that out. I looked him straight in his eyes. "I told her to tell you that if I saw you first, I would avoid you. But if you came for me, then I would put you down like a rabid dog. Apparently, stupid people don't learn the lessons presented to them. I sincerely hope your other friends learn the damn lesson before I bring my friends in. You think you are bad." I shut off the recorder function just before I spoke, so the rest of our final conversation wouldn't be admissible. I leaned in close to his ears so he could understand me well. I have friends that won't make a public statement of what the lack of worth your badass friends are. They will just disappear. Their bikes will be chopped up and sold. Their families will have many questions, but there won't be any answers. Just the mental image of a dark hole in the ground where no one will ever find them. Later, his 2 compatriots would not be able to testify as to what I said. Right about then, Steve decided to give up the ghost and took his last breath. I can't really say if he understood what I told him, but I was prepared to repeat the lesson if needed. The cops arrived, and I made sure they understood I posed no threat by kneeling on the floor with the judge open and the shelves exposed on the floor in front of me. I had my hands behind my head, but my eyes were still on the 2 lying on the floor in case they suddenly got brave. The first cop held his gun on us all while I was handcuffed. Then the other 2 were cuffed, even though they posed no threat right then. I guess everyone is a suspect until it is all sorted out. A quick search by one of the cops revealed knives and pistols being carried by both bikers. Even Behemoth was armed with a pistol and brass knuckles when they examined his body. The boys from the ambulances were soon on the scene and took the 2 bikers out post-haste as they were starting to look a little gray in the face. The 2 next arriving cops rode with them to Centerville to the trauma center. Man, I was responsible for a lot of business there these past few months since this had all started. The cops interviewed me on the scene after reading my rights. I had them call an attorney that I knew and then gave them my statement. I held nothing back this time. They grabbed my phone and also radioed the dispatcher to timestamp the recording of the 911 call for review as evidence. On my phone were also selfies of some of my injuries from the beating Behemoth had laid on me, along with all those messages and phone calls from my wife. I figured the DA would have a field day with them all. They took me to the station and booked me on manslaughter, use of a firearm in the city limits, and aggravated assault. The detective that re-interviewed me told me that additional charges might be leveled at me before it was all done. Then my new attorney showed up, and the questions ceased for a while. The next morning, I was let out on my own recognizance as the papers and news teams had gotten hold of the story and painted it as a man who was being persecuted by bad actors and had finally put a stop to it. The DA was getting more than a few phone calls demanding that I be released, and he apparently agreed. I was told, though, that charges were still hanging over my head and that all my guns had been taken into evidence until everything was settled. I wasn't too worried. I had friends who would rearm me in a moment. The DA did let me know that Lisa was singing a different tune than the story I had sworn to. It appears that, according to her, Steve had sought me out to ask me to become his accountant, and that he wanted to let bygones be bygones. I had to laugh at that. What a fairy tale. The DA told me that the recordings told a different story, and hoped that the violence would now die down a little. I just nodded at him as I left the police station. Lisa met me at the door as I exited. "You butcher, how dare you kill my man? He was just coming to try and bury the hatchet, not pose any threat to you, and you shoot him in cold blood." She tried to hit me, but a couple of cops were just coming up to the door and soon had her in cuffs. My attorney told them to press charges for domestic assault, and they hustled her into the headquarters. I think she is still taking those stupid pills. Hopefully, the DA will play the recording to her of the break-in and assault on me, and maybe she would then shut up. Somehow, I doubted it. I couldn't go back to my apartment as it was still a crime scene, so Dan came and took me to his house. It was time to end this whole farce. First, my new attorney took down all the information needed to file for divorce from Lisa. Then he left, and Dan and I had a little council of war. Steve's friends needed to see the error of their ways, and my old friends were the ones to deliver the message. First order of business, the owner of Tony's, the bar where this all started, suddenly sold out to a consortium of investors. The place was to be shuttered and then remodeled. I heard the theme was to be a place for kids to have birthday parties. The bikers would have to find another location to meet and drink, and whatever else they were involved in. Before Tony's had its final day of business, a couple of other men, very hard men who didn't hide the fact they carried very big and nasty weapons, came into the bar and sat down at one of the tables being used as the clearinghouse for the bike club. I heard later that each and every man at the table came away with the understanding that any further retribution coming my way would be viewed unfavorably by my friends. A couple of names were dropped, actually old friends and business associates that did not have the best of reputations. I believe the message was received very loud and clear. It took a few weeks, but the charges were dropped. Lisa tried to make a stink, but the DA let her know that lying to the police was a felony. So she finally admitted that Stevie Boy was not looking to engage my services, but was intent on making me pay for hurting his friends. She was unrepentant. I guess she really believed she loved him, and that he loved her. It cost me half of my known assets to get her out of my life, but it was worth it. But let me repeat, only my known assets. A little birdie told me that a very nasty woman paid her a visit after the final hearing, and she decided to move away far enough that we wouldn't run into each other. My friend told me that it took a little persuasion to make her understand what needed to be done. My wife actually wanted to sue me again for hiding my assets, but the visit made her realize that money was not worth it. I don't know what was actually said and how it was said, but whatever the message, she received it loud and clear. The house was repaired quickly while Lisa still lived there. I went ahead and paid for some upgrades that the contractor assured me would pay back in increased value. Oh yes, she did pay the rent demanded. I guess she decided that I meant what I said after Steve paid the ultimate price. Soon after the final decree and Lisa moving away, the house sold. I made sure to deposit half of the profit in her account. That was my only known asset, if I must add. And yes, I got my guns back, but with the admonishment by the police that they were watching me. I just smiled and nodded as I reloaded the judge. Despite my unnamed friend's warnings to the bike club, I was prepared for someone to try to take me out. Some people never learn the lessons presented to them. I still work at the same accounting office and still have some of my old friends from the hood as clients. My boss loves the money I'm bringing in, so he doesn't say much about them. I also still have my go bag in a hidden spot, just in case it becomes a little warm around here, especially after having had to kill one attacker and wound a couple of others. Nothing like something like that to keep a couple of sharp cops watching out and adding little clues and pieces of evidence until the dots connect. Recently, my boss sent me to Baja, Mexico. A new client needs our help to figure out a way to make his narco money into real business money. The guy is nice, but for some odd reason, keeps asking me if I like stew. And finally, am I dating again? Once in a while, I will actually have a real date with a real woman. Mostly, I have a couple of friends with benefits, but the real love of my life are the 2 new German Shepherd puppies that have entered my life. If you wake up to 2 little puppies wagging their tails and showering you with kisses, for sure your life is good. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.